Come, Holy Spirit, and kindle the fire that is in us. Take our lips and speak through them. Take our hearts and see through them. Take our souls and set them on fire. Amen. Well, this is a sermon about anxiety. I grew up in a suburb of Dayton, Ohio, the proud home of the Wright brothers. I think I may have mentioned it, but if you're from Dayton, you can't mention it too often. It's where the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is a major local employer, and it was named in their honor. Now, my parents were able to save up and buy the smallest house in the best school district they could afford, and so I grew up in the warmth and naivete of an American Midwestern suburb. And I did so in the midst of a Cold War taking place all around us. There were only a few hints of this distant danger. From my backyard, you could see dozens of military planes flying past on any given day. At the elementary school I attended, we periodically had duck and cover drills. Some of you may remember these. We were instructed to leave our classroom in an orderly fashion, kneel down against the wall of the hallway, and with our heads bent down and our arms covering our heads, we were safely prepared in the event our community was about to be bombed by the Russians. I remember once we were instructed to leave the classroom kind of abruptly and to kneel in the duck and cover position, and as I did so in the darkened hallway of the school, I heard a distant plane flying overhead. And I was absolutely certain that this was no longer a drill. And I waited to hear the wail of the bombs dropping like the ones you hear in movies about World War II. It seemed like an eternity before the plane continued into the distance, and then all of us spared for the moment. My classmates and I stood and walked single file back into our fourth grade classroom. This has been an unsettling week in the midst of a series of unsettling news weeks. The news that North Korea has developed the capacity to launch a nuclear-armed missile which could reach Alaska brought back all of those dormant memories for me. Of course, it's hard for a layman to gauge the seriousness of such reporting. Maybe it's not as big of a deal as I thought. Maybe the risks are overblown. But then the Secretary of Defense said that North Korea's advancing missile and nuclear programs are the most urgent and dangerous threat to peace and national security. And the New York Times reported that Bill Richardson, a former governor of New Mexico and an occasional mediator between the U.S. and North Korea, was asked this week on the BBC program to rate his optimism on a scale of 1 to 10 regarding the situation between North Korea and the U.S. He said, "I'm at about a 3 right now, and it's dwindling. I'm worried. I'm really worried." There's an African proverb that says, "Do not blame God for having created the lion, but thank God for not giving it wings." Has the lion been given wings? That long story we heard this morning from Genesis is the ongoing story of the covenant between God and God's people. It's a transactional story by its very nature. When God's people seek God and obey God, then God seeks them and blesses them in return. Abraham, on the heels of the death of his beloved wife Sarah, binds his most trusted servant with a solemn oath to find a bride for his son. Now, this is no small thing. This is the future of the family, the tribe. And this tremendously important, sacred responsibility has been given to one man. Now, no one is going in this day on Match.com or Tinder to find a mate. No one went to a social event thinking that they might pick up someone whom they then might marry. That wasn't the way things worked. No, this is old school. And an intermediary is sent on behalf of Abraham's son Isaac. And given the importance of the assignment, the intermediary prays to God. He prays he will be given a sign that the woman who offers water to him and to his camels will be the woman God has chosen to be Isaac's wife. Now, for those of you who are single and looking, please note that it's the person who will offer water to you and then to your camels who's the real catch. Any somebody can offer you water, but when they offer your camels water, then you know you found the genuine article. I'm just saying here. So Rebecca does just this. She offers water to the intermediary and to his camels. She exhibits the kindness and generosity of one who would carry on the heritage of Abraham. And God makes it abundantly clear. Here is the sign. She's the one. And after the intermediary assures Rebecca of Isaac's bloodline and his station in life, her family asks her, "Will you go with this man?" And Rebecca replies simply, "I will. I will." Will you go with this man? Will you go with this woman? Will you follow this new path? Will you take this one big chance? Will you pursue this shimmering dream? Our lives are distillations of our responses to our biggest opportunities. Your life is made up of your responses to the biggest questions life throws at you. Will you stand up for this principle? Will you take this risk for your child or your grandchild? Will you speak out against this evil? And when we offer prayers to God for God's wisdom and guidance, in the midst of these moments, we are not disregarded. God's so long ago promises to old Abraham were kept as Rebekah became Isaac's beloved wife, and Isaac found comfort in this love following his mother's death. Great opportunity for anxiety, great trust. And trust is an amazing thing. In this story, Rebecca is trusted by her family to make the right decision, and in return, she trusts the intermediary who extends the offer of a marriage. The intermediary trusts in God and believes God will provide for his master's needs. And the master, Abraham, trusts in God's provision completely because he has seen how completely God fulfilled all of God's promises to him thus far. So how can we learn such a trust? The Apostle Paul, in one of the most candid and transparent passages in Scripture, confesses, and it was read so beautifully, "I can will what is right, but I cannot do it." Paul knows he can't trust his conscience to win over his desires. He acknowledges that there's a war going on between what is right and what he's inclined to actually do. He says, "When I want to do what is good, evil lies close at hand." Oh, how honest, how true. So often our attempts to be people of faith are so irretrievably broken. I want to help the poor, but do I really want to help the poor Or do I want to make myself feel good about helping the poor? I want peace, but do I want the peace that shrouds justice? Do I seek after the peace that enforces a false quiet, the peace that mocks truth? I want to know God, but do I really want to know God, or do I want to be given an easy pass that endorses all my half-hearted attempts to do anything truly good? That towering theologian, Paul Tillich, wrote these words in response to these kinds of questions. The yoke of Jesus is easy in itself because it is above law and replaces the roiling and laboring with rest in our souls. The yoke of religion and law presupposes all those splits and gaps in our souls which drive us to the attempt to overcome them. The yoke of Jesus is above those splits and gaps. It has overcome them whenever it appears and is received. It's not a new command, a new doctrine, or new morals, but rather a new reality, a new being, and a new power of transforming life. In Matthew's gospel, Jesus embraces all who are burdened by the oppressive demands of the scribes, all the burdens of the oppressive demands of the Pharisees. He knows they'll not find peace in the law. He knows they will not find peace and rest in the demands of the righteous. He knows. Now, on a summer Sunday, it seems like the congregation should get a little jelly bean for their efforts in being here. And so I'm going to tell an old story that I heard in Texas. In Texas, they tell stories about Aggies. Those are graduates of Texas A&M, lots of those stories. And then they tell stories about Texas oil men. And so this is a Texas oilman who builds a new swimming pool. And in order to really set off the swimming pool, he places a shark in it, kind of as a curiosity. This may not be true. And so he holds this large party. He has all of his friends and neighbors come over, and then he announces to the assembled crowd this proposition: if any man can swim across this pool before the shark gets to him, he can either have my beautiful ranch house or my beautiful home or $10 million in cash. Suddenly, there was a splash, and there is this guy swimming just as fast as he could to get across that pool. And he pulls himself up out of the pool just as the shark's teeth snap right behind him. And the Texan's amazed. He says, "Do you want the ranch or the home or the cash?" And the bedraggled swimmer says, "Well, none of them, sir. I just want to know the name of the guy who pushed me in." I love this old chestnut because it actually describes how so many of us spend our lives. We're afraid. We're swimming just as fast as we can, fearful we're losing ground to some unseen evil, and all the while wondering just how we got into this situation in the first place. And this, of course, is not what Jesus meant when he said, "My yoke is easy and my burden light." It may have some connection to the previous passage in the gospel where Jesus says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Rest. Peace. Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you, Any one of you who are weary, any one of you carrying a heavy burden, I will give you rest. Rest from financial anxiety, rest from emotional turmoil, rest from performance pressures, rest from the acceptance of the crowd, rest from the pressures you place upon yourself to be more and to be better and to be perfect. Rest from our fears that the world will be melted in a nuclear Armageddon. Rest from our fears that our republic cannot continue to hold together the very diversity which defines it. Rest from our fears that the lions will be given wings. Maybe North Korea is not the first thing on your mind this morning. It's been a long time since I was in the 4th grade and heard those planes overhead. But it's something. Every person in this room, every person in this sacred space is beating back anxiety and fear about something, about a diagnosis, about a relationship, about a job, something. And Jesus tells us, hand it over. Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. And by God, we need it. Amen.